We'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which this podcast was recorded, the Gadigal People of the Eora Nation. We pay our respects to elders past and present. This episode contains discussion of suicide. If this raises any issues for you, support is available through the links and phone numbers in the show notes.
Today, we're going back to 1995 and the day Ollie Ollerton attends his brother's military graduation ceremony. Ollie has been in the military himself since he was 18. But after 5 years, including tours of Northern Ireland and Iraq, he's done. In 6 months, he's going to leave. That's the plan at least, until he bumps into a former officer that he served with in Iraq. This chance meeting changes everything when the officer tells Ollie he's got what it takes to join the Special Forces. The 5-minute conversation plants the seed for Ollie, and it's the catalyst for him to become one of the world's most elite military personnel. He makes it through the grueling 6-month selection process, one of only 5 out of 250 people who do, and spends the next 6 years doing things that most people wouldn't even imagine possible. I'm at Middleton, you're listening to Head Game. Today, what it takes to get into one of the most highly trained and respected military forces in the world, and why leaving can be the biggest challenge of all. Mr. Ollerton, Ollie Ollerton from SAS Australia, my co-worker, my sidekick. I don't know how to introduce you, Ollie, just as a great friend, and it's a great pleasure to have you on my podcast. Head Game. Ollie, how are you?
I'm good, mate, and it's great to be here. And it's like I was sat here like laughing to myself because I'm used to being that side of the desk with me, and now I know how intimidating it is for the people on the other side.
So, Ollie, it's great to have you here. We've been mates since 2015, working together. We've done a lot together. We've seen a lot of each other, and I have seen a great transition with yourself, you know, and we have addictive personalities, you know, that's who we are. You know, we jump into something, we get our head into it, and then we flip over to something else, until finally we're happy with oneself. And I would say that you're certainly at that stage now. But there's such an interesting story that I've heard multiple times, but only through, you know, maybe having a beer together or through, you know, chatting at the table or wherever it may be. And that's your upbringing, not only your upbringing, but that moment that you were mauled by a chimpanzee. Take me back to that moment, because that was such a life-changing moment for you. And I know that because every time we do chat, stories always comes up, and more in a positive light now. But take me back to that day who was the Ollie Ollerton of the days where you walked into that circus, and it sort of changed your life, really, didn't it, forever? Yeah,
it did. And I'd just like to say before we go on to that this is a story that never came back to the surface for a long, long time. And it's something that I'm still, to this day, unravelling. You know what I mean? And I think this is a good thing for people that have been through any kind of trauma. There's a lot of people that will go, right, that was terrible, I just want to forget it. It's the worst thing you can do. It's the worst thing you can do, because at the end of the day, it's been there, it's taught you something. What can you take from it?
And it keeps coming up, right?
And it keeps coming up. But the thing is, for me, going back to that 10-year-old boy, and I'll talk about that in a second, is the fact that I look at it now in a positive light. Yeah. You know what I mean? If it was taking me back to a very negative part of my life, and it was, in effect, defining who I am today, then I wouldn't be talking about it. You know, I think that people have got to be careful of that, because if you're reliving trauma constantly with no positive light, it's not going to affect your journey moving forward very well at all. But me as a 10-year-old boy, very inquisitive, loved Tarzan, been watching it that day. Back in my day, it was like I was watching Johnny Wiseman.
Tarzan
that morning, every day, mate, at the summer holidays, I would watch Tarzan, and it was old Johnny Wiseman, and he was in that thing where they speeded it up so he looked faster across the water. Alligator following him. And for me, when I got down to the circus, it was like, you know, we didn't know the circus was in town. We were going swimming, and there was 3 of us, me, my brother, and my brother's best mate. And that became relevant later. But we went into the big top, looked around, nothing that exciting, you know.
And this was all closed down at the time?
Yeah, well, they were setting up. So we went.
You shouldn't have been there.
We shouldn't have been there, but we went to see the first person that we saw, big burly bloke said, look, can we look around? The guy says, yeah, help yourself. It was 1980, mate. You know what I mean? You can walk around a circus with wild animals, no health and safety or anything. Yeah. So anyway, we walked in there, looked around, and you know what you're like as a 10-year-old, inquisitive. And I've separated from my brother, his best mate, went over to the split in the side of the tent, which went to the back of the marquee, pulled it to one side, sun hit me straight in the eyes. And once my vision cleared, I saw in front of me something incredible. And that was the chimp, little baby chimp. And that to me was a little piece of Hollywood. You know what I mean? It was like, it was Tarzan's sidekick.
Imagine that.
It was, brought up with cats and dogs, and then there's the chimp there. So anyway, I made my way to it cautiously, and it was this enclosed space. I started to interact with this chimp. You know, it looked at me with these beautiful brown eyes. It sounds weird, but we connected. You know, it was an incredible moment, timeless. Beautiful blue sky, so serene. And then it started passing me food, and I was like, I'm not going to eat that. It's disgusting. So I didn't want to break the serenity of the moment, so I'm throwing it down the side of, sliding it down here. Yeah, getting away with it.
Almost making it look like you're eating it like a baby.
Yeah. And the chimp was loving it, you know what I mean? It was incredible. But then, and I say it was like a fighter jet cutting through the sky. The noise was that severe in that sort of very sort of...
precise moment.
And it was the roar, the mother. And that caught my attention. In beyond the chimp, in the shadows, was the mum. Saw me as a threat and would do anything to protect its young.
Mm-hmm, of course. And
came at me at Mach 10. And it was in that moment where I was stood there like a deer in the headlights. I couldn't move. You know, I was brought up with cats and dogs and being charged at by this chimp that's going absolutely mental. And then just at the point I thought, I've got enough courage to get out of the way. This thing pounced through the air. It must have been 20 foot. And the blue sky turned to black as this thing then landed on my chest, pinned me to the floor, and then just started going mental. You know, I had one sole intention, and that was to kill me, to end my life.
So this chimp jumps on you, pins you.
Yeah.
Can you just take me back to that moment, that impact? Do you remember the impact? Was it quite a hard impact? Did it flatten you, or was it someone just like jumping on you that you lost your balance, or was this a powerful way?
No, this was a powerful. It almost like it came up. It came down onto me. It wasn't like it came up at me, but I can remember that first fist. The first fist that came, clenched fist, hammer fist, straight down into my solar plexus, and I had nothing, mate. I just went, just nothing left in me. And then it was like a drummer in a rock band. I was the drum. You know what I mean? Fist after fist after fist. And then I could feel the flesh being torn from my forearms.
So you've got your forearms up like this,
right?
Yeah,
because I started defending myself. I put my arms up here.
Yeah, you do.
And I could feel the flesh being pulled away. And it was in that moment that my life started flashing in front of me. It didn't take long because I was 10.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
But it was in that moment, and this is what I reflect on. And I'm reflecting on this stuff constantly now, because I think when we can pick apart these traumatic events, we learn so much that it helps us pave the way for the future. Yeah. And that's what I'm doing constantly. I'm learning new stuff all the time. So for me at that moment, because someone asked me a rhetorical question, right? And that was, do you think you'd have passed Special Forces selection if you'd not been attacked by the chimp? I can't answer that question. But at that moment, I found something I never knew I had. One side of me wanted to lie down and just curl up and just take the beating, which would have ended in my death.
Yeah.
But there was something that happened in that moment. It was that going to this place that I never knew existed. There was a voice that I heard in my head saying, it doesn't end today. It doesn't end this way.
Get out of there.
Get out. Yeah. And it was that then made me retaliate. And you know that when you retaliate against an opponent, you're up in the game.
Yeah, of course.
Do you know, I knew that straight away, but that was a risk I was prepared to take in that moment. Everything's happening so fast. I'm not sitting there analysing the situation.
Yeah, of course.
So in that moment, that gave me enough courage to tackle the chimp or unbalance the chimp, get my knee up to my chest. I smashed out as hard as possible into the chimp's chest. And this is
with
my foot. With my foot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you've just kicked it off you, basically.
As hard as I could.
Yeah.
Knocked it to the floor, and that's my moment for escape. So I'm then scurrying across the floor like some kind of upside-down spider. And I ran out of energy. Chimp's getting to its feet, angrier than ever now. I've upped the game. You know what I mean? I'm just laying there thinking, this is it.
And even the chimp's like, game on.
Yeah, game on.
I've got competition here. This is a challenge.
Exactly.
This is a real threat now.
Yeah.
It's gone from thinking, this is the potential threat.
Defense to attack.
To this is now a real threat. And he's going to get it.
Yeah. So then I lay there waiting for that to happen, and this thing just charged at me.
So you're trying to scurry away. And this thing's got back on its feet and it's gone again.
I'm watching it get to its feet and I'm thinking, I'll just shit myself. So I just lay there. And then this thing charged at me even faster than before, aggressive as anything, blood in its teeth. And honestly, mate, it was an inch before the chain caught it around the neck.
That's something out of a movie.
It
That's
is.
Something
it
out
is.
Of
And you know what? The reason I can relive that now, because I'll talk about that. First of all, before I do talk about that, it was that moment then when I looked into that, I tapped into this inner strength that we all have. You know that as well as I do. That we all have this inner potential that I tapped into that in that moment, which would then help me get through Special Forces selection, which would then bring me back from those really dark days when I was thinking about suicide. Yeah. You know, it was tapping into that inner
confidence, right? Inner capability, even though it's through trauma, hardship and suffering, it's like, wow, I am capable of this, right? It's like, wow, getting a chimp off you and surviving a chimp attack. Never in a million years. Once that chimp's got you, you're not getting out of its grip. You're not getting out of its teeth, out of its jaws. After that attack, and I don't think anyone's ever asked you this, but after that attack, how do you recover from that? How do you recover physically? How do you recover psychologically after the attack?
Well, this is the thing, right? I didn't do anything. This is my opinion, okay? This is my thoughts on it. We have this innate capability that when we go through a traumatic event, we have this inner protection system that helps us lock away that intimate trauma. We put it in a box and push it away, and that is great to get over the short term. Yeah. It's needed to get over the short term, but it doesn't mean that you should leave it locked away. And that was it for me. From that, the physical aspects of it, you know, my arm was torn to bits. Later on, like about a month later, I would be in Saint-Tropez with the family. And I can remember that moment in Saint-Tropez when we were in like this big static caravan. The whole place was stinking and I couldn't smell it. And my dad was like going around checking the drains and everything. And he finally homed in on my arm, took off the bandages, and it was green. It was green. I caught gangrene.
Yeah, of course you
And
did.
then shortly after that, my dad gets me in a car, races me off to Saint-Tropez. And then next thing, I'm on the doctor's surgery with my dad with his knee on my chest and the doctor scrubbing the wound out with ethanol.
Old school,
proper old school, you know what I mean? And that, to me, that was like, first of all, I've got my dad who, in your head, you know, when you're going through that trauma, is subjecting you to that pain. It's like, that was traumatic. Because after I'd been through that, I'd screamed the place down. We then walked into the...
you're 10 years old,
10
right?
years old, yeah. We walked into the waiting room. He took us out a different way. I think it's because the bill we paid for him to do that. So he took us out the nice way into the waiting room. We got into this waiting room. There was like paintings on the ceiling and everything. It was beautiful, you know, beautiful furniture. And my dad's introduced to this stunning lady. I didn't know what was going on. I was so traumatized. Blonde hair, beautiful French. My dad's kissing her cheek to cheek, totally elated. Mm-hmm. We then get down the stairs, walk outside into the street, and I just want a hug from my dad, you know what I mean? I want some love. Mm-hmm. And he looks down at me and he goes, "Son, I've just met Brigitte Bardot." Well, who the fuck is Brigitte Bardot?
Dad, give me a hug. Give me a hug.
Dad.
Wow.
Son, I've just met Brigitte Bardot.
Do you know what? It's the small things that always crop back up. You know, the small lack of emotion, the small lack of empathy, the small lack of love that we need as a child. In those moments, and the small lack of direction as well. You know, it's like, wow, we need that direction at 10. We need that love. That's all we need. We don't need anything else, really, do we?
No.
We don't need the big glamorous stuff, you know, anything materialistic. Yeah, we don't need it. We just need guidance. We need some love, and we need someone that we can go to for protection, right?
Yeah, that umbrella.
And that wasn't there for you.
Yeah, no, it wasn't. And I remember that moment specifically because that's all I wanted. You know, I'd just been subjected through that trauma. That's all I wanted. But that was
a hug, right?
Yeah, just a hug, just in that moment. Just
and
you know, you'd had
a trauma,
10 minutes
right?
before that, you'd had your knee in my chest. You know what I mean? As my arm's being scrubbed out, I just want a hug, mate. Just give me a hug.
Yeah.
I just met Brigitte Bardot. I'm like, I don't know who that is. Yeah. That was the physical stuff. But then the mental stuff, that'd be an underlying issue, which I can only unpick at this later stage in life. I have this saying that I say that hindsight's a wonderful thing, but it never won any wars. Yeah. It's good to reflect, you know what I mean? It's good to understand, but you can, you know, it's there for a reason. And I also say this other saying, which is, what truly defines us in this world is rarely chosen. You know what I mean? It's those moments that we don't necessarily choose. Like for us, Special Forces selection, 100%. We chose to do. Yeah. But it's the things you did afterwards.
Yeah, that's out of your control. That you've had to get through, or you've had no option. There's two options, you know. you're left with one option, and you have to get through it, right?
Yeah.
They're the moments that actually,
you don't choose them.
You don't choose them.
But they're the ones that really define who you are. And the people that go through hardship and stuff like that, these are the moments that really do define the person.
Absolutely. And you find out your true character as well, don't you? You find out,
absolutely.
And you start to learn about yourself. That whole process of going, right, there's so much more to this. There's so much more to me. There's so much more to life. And it's that once that process starts, it's very hard to stop, right? It's a great process to go through, as long as you don't overthink and overanalyze. So after this chimp attack, you don't recover. Basically, you don't seek any help. You don't seek any. There's no, back in the day, I don't know whether you see a psychiatrist but none of that. You just deal with it, lock it away, deal with it. You just think to yourself, listen, I'm lucky to be here. And then what forces you to join the military?
I'll tell you what, before I say that though, it's interesting because after that attack, I was one of three, the youngest in the family. We came from a decent family, not rich, but not poor, decent family.
Getting by.
But I went on this absolute journey of mayhem. Got in a lot of trouble with the police and stuff like that. And I was just, it was after that attack, it was like I was just pushing everything. And I needed to be stopped. I needed to be stopped. And it was the police that did stop me in the end. I ended up on remand.
So when you say you after that attack, you just wanted to, do you think because of after that attack, you realised, wow, I've just survived a chimp attack. I've just kicked a chimp off me. I just fought a chimp. I've just, I've just got through this situation, and it's like no one's ever experienced that before. No one could ever have done that. Was it sort of like a false sense of confidence that you gained that you went into a little bit of a rebellious stage? Yeah.
Well, the thing is, we both know. We've been in those situations where you don't think you're getting out of it.
No, yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's the same as people like they catch a cancer or something. Yeah. It's like, why does it take one of these moments? And I learned this from a very early age of staring at death.
Yeah.
Why does it take those moments before we truly start to live life? But what you've got to do as an adult, when these things happen, you're disciplined, hopefully disciplined enough to direct that energy.
Knowledgeable enough.
Yeah, knowledgeable enough. For me, as a 10-year-old, I didn't know where that energy... I had so much energy and wanted to push it so much. Subconsciously, I was exactly what you've just said. And I was pushing everywhere, you know what I mean? Life just wasn't enough for me. No one was channeling my sort of energy. I was the back end of the family, sort of the youngest. Yeah. So really, I wasn't guided enough. I'm not taking anything away from my parents, but that energy needed to be guided. Anyway, got loads of trouble with the police, ended up on remand in a remand home. Didn't get a custodial sentence, but I was so close, and that's what I needed. It was like a wake up. And from that moment on, my mum grabbed hold of me.
The wake up.
She was like, the wake up. Her life was falling apart, but she grabbed hold of me and she gave me everything. You know what I mean? My father had left and everything else, and she was like, right, this energy needs to be focused. She got me into my running. I was like a cross country runner. That energy was then channeled.
Got you.
It was harnessed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? When it's not harnessed and you don't know the difference between right and wrong, you know what I mean? You're all over the place.
Especially when you haven't got someone there as well. I grew up without my father. But when you haven't got someone there to either be proud of you when you succeed or disappointed in you when you fail, there's no... Where's the start and stopping here?
Yeah.
So I used to do stuff like that as well. I used to get in so much trouble that but no one was really there to direct me or be disappointed in me. They'd be come on, sort yourself out. And then when I succeeded, there was never, well done, this is what success is. Like, this is where you should be directing your energy. This is where it was almost like a melee of absolutely everything. I'd just go from a super low to a super high, but I couldn't differentiate the two of them. It was just like, right, well, no, what am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? No one's actually telling me. So you figure it out yourself. You do it through trial and error, right?
Exactly.
Until one day you do get that wake-up call.
Yeah.
And it hits you like you're just about to go to prison. Same with myself. It hit me hard. It's like, wow. And it's the wake-up call that you need.
Yeah.
And was that the wake-up call that you needed to join the military?
Yeah, it was, because I made that decision very early. It was like 14 years old, which I didn't think was I look back now and I think my son didn't know. I don't know if he still does. He's 22. You know what I mean? And a lot of people, 14 years old, I went, right, that's it. I'm joining the military. I'm joining the Marine. I find out who was the hardest kind of military unit. It's clearly the Marines.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I thought so at that stage. But an interesting thing happened. And in that year, 1980, was also the year that the Iranian embassy got overtaken and the SAS stormed. So as a kid, it was a busy year for me, tapped by the chimp, and then I saw that on TV. That was the seed. You know what I mean? I saw those people in black attacking that embassy, and it was such a visual thing for me. So that's when the seed was sown. However, you know, as you do, you're like, I could never do that because they're like carved in marble from a different planet.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So anyway, I joined the military, or wanted to join the military, and at 14, I made that decision. Lost all interest in academia. You know, at school, I was doing all right, and then just went, I don't see the point of this. For what I want to do, I don't see the point of this.
Take me back through your first day of you joining the military and, and what was going through your head. And
I wanted to join at 16.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That was it. That was, for me, it was like I was so focused on this.
Boy
And my mum, boy soldier.
Yeah.
And my mum was taking me to Derby recruitment office on a regular basis. They knew, you know, it's first name terms there. But because I had a criminal record, they were like, look, you've got two choices here. You can join at 16, but you're going to have to take your record in with you. You know what I mean? You're going to have to, but if you wait until you're 18, it'll be spent and you don't need to declare it. So anyway, it was decided that I would wait till I was 18, which was horrendous for me because it was like I was just gagging to get in there, you know what I mean?
Especially at that age,
a
couple of years.
It was the solution
like
to everything,
years,
you know what I mean?
They?
It was that band of brothers, it was everything, you know what I mean? It was like, give me a massive sense of purpose. So I had to wait a couple of years doing odd jobs, this, that and the other, loads of different stuff. Managed to finally get in the Royal Marines, which was it was awesome for me, you know what I mean? I went through training, got out the back end of that, and the best moment was when my mum, who went through hell with me, she was like my PTI, you know what I mean? She started like really focusing on me, and to be there with my Green Beret, my Love It's On, and my Blues on that day, and my mum to be there was like, my dad was there as well, but for my mum to be there and see that was one of the most incredible moments. And then I went off to 4-5 Commando up in Scotland, and that's where the dream started to fall apart.
Oh, did it?
Yeah, because I got up there, you know what I mean? I had all these visions from 14-year-old. All the visions, all the perception that you've created,
almost manifesting as well.
Like,
this is how it's going to be. This is what I'm going to do. Yeah. The training lived up to it. You're there with your Green Beret and you love it. It's bang, bang, bang. Then you go to Arbroath and you're just met by a load of honking Marines, right? And the whole process starts to crumble.
I got. You get your initiation, you know what I mean?
Of course.
You know,
but back then it was brutal.
It was brutal, man. I got my nose smashed in. I couldn't then go on deployment. I had to go to hospital. Yeah. You know what I mean? All my nose broken. All the lads went off to, I think it was, I'm not sure if it was Norway or somewhere, but I missed the whole first trip, my first trip. And that's for me when it started to like fall apart. And then Christmas Eve, I'm like there with a weapon on the main gate. And I'm like, this wasn't in the brochure.
Yeah, exactly.
When I got the brochure, there's a blonde, there's a guy on the beach. There's a guy on a windsurf, you know what I mean, in the Bahamas or somewhere. He's on leave. He misses his essence on the beach, blonde hair staring at him thinking, oh, you're such a legend because you're a bootleg. Yeah. And you know what I mean? That's what I said. When I get up to 4-5 Commando and it's like Christmas Eve and it's freezing. And I'm like, thinking,
that bootleg was me.
That was me.
That wasn't. No, it wasn't.
You know what I mean? So it was just like there's an illusion of what you think it's going to be, and then the reality of it is obviously a different thing. And then off to Northern Ireland. That's when I grew up a lot over in Northern Ireland. And then I came back from there. Then we got recalled to Operation Desert Storm, and I got back from that, and I couldn't handle life as a peacetime soldier. I just could not handle being in camp. And I wanted to be at the front line. I wanted to be at war every day. And I realised I'm not going to get that in the Royal Marines. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's not always not going to happen enough. Yeah. Not back in those days anyway. No. There's a lot less campaigns than there are now.
And then you cast your mind back to the embassy, right?
Yeah.
It's like, you've seen the magazines of the Royal Marines. You've gone in there. It's not what you like. You cast your mind back and go, well, actually, I'm the elite of the conventional forces, fighting forces, which is the parachute regiment and the Royal Marines, and the special forces are made up of either of those, majority of those organisations, and you see a lot of people going on selection as well, don't you? You see them going on selection, so you think to yourself, well, it's achievable. That dream sort of becomes, you start to see it a bit clearer, and it becomes
when you see people that getting through, and that gives you a little bit of sense of belief, doesn't it? Or so the thing is, when I was at the careers office, I can remember going in there. I went in there so many times anyway, but I can remember there was this Wren in there, a female from the Navy who was in the careers office, and she's, if you do get in the Royal Marines, what do you want to do? I opened the brochure straight away and gave it to her, and there was an SBS combat frogman swimming up to an SDV, a swimmer delivery vehicle, mini sub, and I said, I want to do that, and she just looked at me, she went, everyone wants that. You know what I mean? But again, that was the seed.
Love it.
As it turned out,
but that's the best quote that they could give us.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. The red flag to a ball.
Yeah, exactly.
Everyone wants that, as if to say you'll never get it. Everyone wants that. So anyway, that was. But then at that point in my life, that transition, I lost all kind of interest in being a soldier. The more you think about something, the more you'll put blockages in your way, especially if it's uncharted territory. You start to think of all the things that could go wrong. That's natural for the mind, isn't it? You know what I mean? So the more you dwell on the things that could stop you from doing it, the more you get focused on that
negative default mindset.
Exactly,
right? It's
exactly.
Right. Yeah.
You don't take action. You're going to compound that with things. Why not to do it? Reasons
Limiting
why not
yourself.
to? Limiting beliefs and everything else. And that for me was that. And I was like, then I decided I'm going to leave. And it was interesting because my brother then passed out. I'd actually moved down to Poole. I was working at
Your
Poole.
brother was in the...
He was in the Royal Navy as helicopter
Navy,
pilot.
that's right, yeah.
I was down at Poole. I'd kind of lost it. I was doing probably down at Poole. I was like, I'm going outside. I had my chitting to leave and everything else. Went to my brother's pass out at Dartmouth. And that's when I bumped into as it turned out, my officer from 4-5 Commando, his girlfriend was in the same batch as my brother, passing out as an officer. So I saw him there. He's like, what are you up to? I said, I'm leaving. And it was through that night, he pulled me to one side. He said, if you leave, you'll regret that for the rest of your life. He says, I believe you've got what it takes to join the Special Forces. And I was shocked at that because I'd lost all interest as a soldier. And the last thing I knew, I was like, I'd rapped. You know what I mean? It's
it was in your head. I'm done.
But the thing is, him saying that to me, I was like, I didn't have belief. And I talk about this a lot because everyone talks about in this world that you've got to have belief. The longer you have belief. I don't believe you have to have belief. Sometimes it's too tough for you to actually think I've got belief. But it does take all it takes for you to lean in and take action. And you build belief. And that's what I did. I didn't have belief. I borrowed it off him.
You commit.
Yeah.
I
borrowed some off him because he had faith in me. I respected him. And I thought I'm going to give it a go just for him, if anything else. I still didn't believe I could pass. Got on selection. As you know, straight up the penny van, the first march, got off the bus. First thing, looked around. Get back on the bus. You made a mistake. You know what I mean? Get back
on the bus. Off the bus.
But then it was my ego that
off
thought,
the bus.
just
on the bus.
disappear later on. So people don't see you.
Yeah, of course.
So,
you don't want to be the first to go.
Yeah. Don't be the first to go. So but I hit that mountain, and all these people you perceive as better than you, passing them.
Yeah.
They're the ones that are falling by the
Taking
wayside, and you're going, hold on a second, what's that? What have I been telling myself? That you're not good enough. You're not this. Who's that in there?
You've been putting those mental blocks on yourself.
Yeah, exactly. But then as you're doing the mountain, you then start to think, maybe I have. And you start to then question, what is the voice in your head telling you that you can't do it?
This is what I say all the time, the importance of committing to something. If you're passionate about it, it's going to scare the hell out of you.
Yeah, it's just that first inch, isn't it? That first second, that first inch. Just commit that far. Inch. Because the more you think about the bigger picture in those hard times, you know what I mean? When you're sat there on selection, which is the hardest thing we've ever chosen to do, when you sat there on selection, like the bigger picture sometimes when the pressure's on of being a special forces, one of the few percent that pass that course starts to like really dissolve and become overwhelming. So forget that. Just do today. Just do right now. Just do this next second. And as you know, going through the interrogation, that does go down to do the next second. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
36 hours. Just do the next second. So that was it. And then I joined my team and everything else. And it was like, I was disappointed when I got there. You know what I mean?
Know what?
I passed out and I was disappointed.
I get that. So talk me through that. So you pass, and in your head, you're like, "Wow, I've this lifelong dream of mine. I've got it." What made you think? I
don't know. It was for me. I look back at it now, right? And what was pushing me for, even today, I'm like walking here thinking about stuff about that whole, from the 10-year-old boy. I'm starting to think about what I did in my life. It's like, it's quite interesting. I don't know if there's any weight in this, but this is my thoughts on it, right? I look back at that. After I was 10, I surrounded myself with the hardest people I could.
Yeah.
You know, even through school, I didn't like my friends were out of school. They were older than me. They were the hardest people in my local town. You know what I mean? When I got out, and I would surround myself with these people. Then I joined the Royal Marines, hardest band of brothers. Yeah. Then I joined the Special Forces, even up the game.
Yeah, exactly.
And now I look back, it was almost like I had to create this defense system because of that young boy. And this is what I do believe. It was always trying to create this defense around me, like build this sort of armor around me as hard as possible. And that's what's kind of pushed me. There was also another thing that I would later on discover, you know, when I went through the plant medicine, which helped me unravel so much, the ayahuasca in Costa Rica. And for me, looking back, it was like I was searching for a war. You know what I mean? I wanted to be at war. I wanted to be at war every day. And we always think as humans, success, happiness, everything, even despair is an external issue. You know what I mean? There's a, you know, happiness is an external fix.
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
you know,
of course.
When our life's going shit, there's someone else to blame.
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah. So for me, I was chasing this external thing that I was drawn towards, but I didn't realize until much later in life when I crashed and burned that the war was inside, and that's what I needed to resolve. But I was looking for that war externally.
Did you have some fun times there, though?
Some great times. Yeah. Great times.
Did you realise the level of capability that you were at?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's like, as you know, like selection, you then join your team and it's ongoing, constant training. Yeah. When back in my day, there wasn't loads of operations, but we did operational stuff, which was brilliant. That's all I wanted to be there for. For me, I wanted to be on the, you know, because of that 10-year-old boy, seeing that, you know, the embassy. Yeah. I was constantly on the black roll, so I wanted the embassy all over again. Yeah, okay. You know what I mean? So I was constantly on the CT wing, you know, counter-terrorism wing, doing, you know, I was constantly on that, and that to me was like it was the best. I loved it. But I wanted to be on operations, not training, not on camp. I wanted to be on operations.
It almost feels like you passed in the wrong sort of era. Because
later
if you would have gone later on when, you know, myself and you know, your Iraqs and your Afghans, you know, just back to back tours and operations. I always say this, and you know, only a few of the older generation will admit this, but you know, the older generation, they were more highly trained and highly tuned. You know, they're training. An operation would come up, they'd decide between the squadrons who would jump on it, and they'd go and do it. And you know, like they're few and far between. You know, but it's training. Where the new school generation, like myself, our training ground was a battlefield. Yeah, I passed selection straight out to Afghanistan, 6-month tour, kicking doors down every day as point man. You know, that's So it's
exactly. It was almost like
that combat. You know, we were so much more combat hardened then. But then you go back to the old school, you know, where they're more finely trained and tuned, and it was just a different
it's a different era. Yeah. And I do believe that if I was a bit later. Yeah. I'd have probably stayed in a lot longer. But for me, it was like, but also the fact, it was like, I just think a big problem with me, I don't know if anything external would have satisfied what I needed to solve inside. You know, and I needed to learn that the hard way. I finally left after 6 years, said I was never going back to a war zone. 3 months later, I'm in a war zone as a contractor.
So you leave, so you never go back to a war zone.
Yeah.
And then someone comes along, and back in that day, though, when the Iraqs did kick off as a private contractor, you were earning ridiculous amounts of money, right? It's about the money. It wasn't really about going into and having job satisfaction. It's like, I've got the SF stamp. I'm going to use it now as a private contractor. You're getting paid ridiculous amounts of money. You're going from your 50 quid a day to your 500 quid a day, whatever it was, you know. And all of a sudden you're living, you know, you're going out there, you're just going through the process, but you're living like a pop star, right?
Yeah, 100%, which was a blessing and a curse.
Okay. Now talk me through that blessing and the curse.
Yeah, well, for me, it was like I got out there, exactly. I now call it fool's gold because I would never compromise my mental and physical state to do any job. You know what I mean? We are the most important project there is. That is fact. So for me out there, you're obviously compromising everything, the safety and everything. Well, I don't talk about safety because health and safety wasn't something that was a part of our life anyway. But the thing is, you're out there doing jobs that you would never do in the military. You know what I mean? And you're risking things like, I've got 12 people. There's 2 of us looking after 12 people on a convoy. You wouldn't do that.
And you've got no top cover as well.
No top cover, no nothing. So you know that if you get whacked, when you get whacked, it's probably highly likely you're not coming out.
Yeah.
So that's happening on a far too regular basis. You know what I mean? And for the first time, I can remember that first attack. I talk about it a lot because I learned a lot about myself in that. 140 kilometres driving down the road in a convoy, got whacked by the militia, 2-car attack onto us from behind. And mate, in that moment, it was like I absolutely shit myself. Not literally.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? When that attack came in, it was like, and I'm driving a car and I'm like realising what's going on.
You've got no Apache cover. You got no air assets. You got a weapon, nothing. A couple of mags, 2 of you against a whole army, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Who don't give a fuck.
Who don't, and you've got no, there's
no.
no fire and manoeuvre out there. And
no safety cover, no nothing. And then you realise in that moment that how... back in the day when that happened, when you're in SF, you would like, bring it on.
Yeah, exactly.
Bring it on. You're invincible.
You're
invincible. You've got a team around you so highly trained.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Everyone's the best weapon system in the world. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you just want that to happen. You're gagging for it to happen.
Sure.
But in that moment, I shit myself and I started thinking, I've analysed this time and time again about what happened in that moment because it was almost like I'd stopped breathing for a minute. You know what I mean? And that's what happens when we get into stressful situations. You start to shallow breathe.
Yeah, of course.
And then once you start to do that, cortisol starts to increase, chemical reaction, which is the fight or flight or freeze. Mm-hmm. I'm driving a car. It's not the best thing to happen. You know what I mean? I start thinking about all the things that could go wrong. So you then start to build into that fear. Fear is a mental and emotional rehearsal for something you don't want to happen. You know what I mean? You can't allow it to dominate. It's contagious, isn't it? It doesn't mean turn your back on it, but you can't. And in that moment, it wasn't until they started shooting at us. Bang, bang, the intimidating sound of that orchestra of hell, of all those AK-47s going off, that it snapped me out. And it was like, bang. Nothing more everything was subconscious from that moment, and the training kicked back in, thank God. And I took a breath in that moment, almost like I'd not breathed for the last minute and a half or whatever. And in that moment, breathing, just adding clarity, which dropped the cortisol, give me a mindset of clarity and not confusion. What do I need to focus on? Not the people in front, not all the things that could go wrong, the people that are shooting at me. Nothing else matters apart from that.
Yeah.
And in that moment, that's why I learned so much. I talk about that: breathe, recalibrate, deliver the action.
That which gives you that clarity of mind to decision making.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and as you know, and I talked about that a lot with people afterwards, and it was like, that's the one thing that got me out of that situation. We got back, and it was incredible. Although in that, I learned so much from that. Much from that, and that's the fact that and you can adapt that in every situation, because you get to a stressful situation, whether you're asking for a pay rise or whatever you're doing, or any situation that is uncomfortable. Unless you get control of your faculties, you're going to make a decision, a heightened sense of emotion, which is then going to create a negative situation that, you're pushing yourself. Your mind just goes, get me out, whatever, wherever you want to take me, get me out.
First thing that pops up, you action it, and it's desperate. And
it's desperate, and it's in the wrong direction. And that's obviously quite an extreme, but people could, there's a lot of stuff now out there about breath work, which is so powerful, starting to control your breathing and everything else, which is incredible. So, but that moment taught me so much about that situation, about myself. But the thing is, the negative side is that was the fact that I thought, that was early on in the days of getting there as a contractor. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And then from that moment on, I was like, I ain't coming back from here. But I'd kind of given up by that time anyway. I was drinking too much, a lot. We went back to the villas. I was drinking. Everyone was drinking. When the tools went down, everyone was drinking. But I think I was drinking more. I was like, I made sure in my room that I had a stash, so I knocked myself out. You know what I mean? I used to sleep with a pistol under my pillow, not knowing if the door was going to be bashed in by the militia. And I lived like that for 4 years. Started taking Valium the day after, just to handle the anxiety of the hangovers and living in Baghdad in the red zone. And it was horrible, mate. It was absolutely horrible. I look back now, and that really did cave me in mentally. I had to get out of there. 4 years later, I just said, I plucked up the courage to leave. And it's so hard when you're being paid that much money, you know what I mean? And that's why I call it fool's gold now. Yeah. Because we're quite happy to compromise everything for the dollar.
Yeah.
So anyway, we do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, there was other situations because my drinking was bad, and there was a few bad parties that went a bit haywire. So I was kind of nudged out, and I feel if I wasn't nudged out, I would have just stayed there. You know what I mean? For a while longer anyway. Yeah. So it's a natural good thing for me to do. Went over to Australia. I was living there at the time, and again I was like, I'm never going back to a war zone. I'm going to get some stability. I'm going to get some money into property and this, that, and the other, in real estate, and sounded all good. But then I heard about this thing, the Grey Man, and that was rescuing kids from child prostitution, slavery in Southeast Asia. Before I knew it, I was over there. Now, I went from the sort of moral standing that I wanted to help these kids, but I didn't realise the gift that was going to give me. It was incredible. I went over there. The kids are being held in these satellite camps. We would go up, get the kids out, get them to an orphanage, process them through before the cartels got to them.
Right, so you'd intercept them, right?
Yeah.
The process was already happening. They've already been trafficked. You'd find out the routes that they were going.
Yeah.
And you'd intercept.
Well, we'd get them right at the core of where they're being held. You know what I mean? So we got to the camps, got them out. But the bottom line is, before long, the whole thing, there was a picture that went viral all over the world, and we had to escape out of Thailand. There was people hunting us down.
So they knew your face.
They knew what. We had the picture that went in actually had black across the eyes, but you know what I mean. That's not. So anyway, it was like we had to escape out of there, get out of there, and then I ended up back in Australia.
It's mad how it goes from once you could go because ultimately you talked about living that war in your head. You always wanted that war. That war was always there, and ultimately all you've done is you've gone from war zone with the chimp to war zone with the military to war zone as a private contractor to war zone with getting these. So you're always seeking for that war,
exactly,
without even realising it, right? Because I'm done. No, the war's not over.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
It pulls you back in.
It's still in my head. It's not over. It's not over. It's not over until you actually can process it properly and go, actually, the war is in my head. It's in me. Yeah,
100%. And this is the thing as well. It's like, this isn't just military or anything. This is people in general, isn't it? A lot of people, anyone that thinks that they can change their outside world by changing their externals, they can change their inner world by changing their external world. It's not going to. You're always going to. Like, if I hadn't have discovered that it's an inside job, that's where we need to work on. You know what I mean? I'd have probably been. You're never going to get that fix.
And how did you discover that?
Well, I actually got back. That whole thing is when I crashed and burned. I got back out of Australia, found something finally that meant so much to me, more than the military or anything. It was like the dots finally connected. And I talk about that because I finally had first-hand experience of understanding the power of helping other people. It's quite natural, isn't it, to understand that we should feel good from helping our fellow human.
That's what humanity is all about. That is humanity at its purest.
Exactly. And this is the thing, and a lot of people are losing a grip on that. There's so many people that are more invested on how many followers they've got on Egogram or any social platform, you know what I mean? They're quite happy to step over each other in a close-knit sports team or corporate team. But it's the power of helping others, the power of collaboration. I'll tell you what, I learned this the other week, and I think this is so powerful because how we've been misguided through society, through the Western world. The true original meaning of the word compete is to strive together. But we've twisted that into
against
beat the other person. And you look how that's affected society. So everyone out there is trying to beat the other person. There's two, from the original term compete, there's two people that gain from that. The person that passes on the knowledge and the one that gains from the knowledge. Do you know what I mean? And that's how society, how we're supposed to live together. Collaboration over competition. But that taught me that lesson.
That's what we do on SAS, right?
Yeah.
SAS, the whole messaging behind that is self-empowerment, passing on our knowledge, our wisdom, our experiences, our trauma, our insecurity, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
So that person can walk out of that show or that course a better version of themselves.
Yeah. Definitely. And that's, when we first did this back in 2015, wasn't it? Yeah. I was like thinking at the time, for me, I was like, it's just going to be for military wannabes, and it's just, this is a one-off opportunity. It's going to be one show, and they need to make the most of it. I can remember those early days when we were talking about it last night. But it wasn't actually until that first show aired that you felt the power. You saw the power of what was happening there, and how. Then that, to me, when you saw it on TV, it gave it purpose because you realised how much it was helping other people. Not just the people on the show, but there's a massive ripple across the whole of the UK. People that had been suffering, people, and they saw us on there and talking about mental health issues and everything else. And from that moment on, I just realised how powerful that show was.
And they saw everyday people achieving amazing things, being pushed beyond the limits that they put on themselves, physically, psychologically, emotionally, and then the books come out. Then you get the feedback from the books where you're constantly helping people. And this is what my calling is. I always say my calling wasn't the special forces. It's not climbing Everest, it's not climbing Kate. That wasn't my calling. I just happened to be good at what I'd done, and I enjoyed what I'd done to a certain extent where I was like, enough is enough. But my calling and the reason why I still do what I do, even though the flack that we've got over the years, within the organisation, within the media, it doesn't deflect, because the purpose is so much greater than all that external nonsense that goes on, right? And that purpose is helping other people. And it's funny that you mentioned that, because we never spoke about this, but that's the reason why I still write my books. People go, and you must be making a mint on your books. Listen, I spend a lot of time to, because I know how powerful they are for people, the feedback that I get from them, the shows. That's why I do the shows, because I know people look at it and they need that motivation. They need an answer within themselves. And they're asking all these questions, and they can watch SAS Australia, for example, and they go, wow, that's me. They look at a recruit and they go, that's me. Look how the DS are pushing them. Look what they're saying. Look how they're mentoring them. Look how they're pushing them. People think it's just a boot camp, brutal boot camp. When you look at the outlying factors and you really dig deep into the show and why it works so well, it's because you're helping people become a better version of who they are.
And there's nothing more powerful than doing something in the service of others, using your experience and knowledge. And this is the thing, I often think you're 100% correct there, and this is how I see it, right? You're born into this world, and that is really our innate sort of calling to help the fellow human. That is our course, that is our path. But then we go on these detours, like for me and for you, that went off into the military, did all that stuff and all this, that and
defensive
the other.
mechanism, though, which you mentioned. You're defending yourself again. You want to be reputation. You want this hard, whatever it may be. It's a defensive mechanism. But all of that drops off. You sort of go back round to who you are. Right?
But a lot of people don't know. We had our calling. You had that point where you've got, like, the show was the opportunity to then bring it to the forefront of everyone's lives and help as many people as possible. But the thing is, like, I questioned this detour. You know what I mean? Questioned the military, questioned everything. I then did that thing in Thailand, which then bounced me across to where my true calling was, and yours. And that was to help other people. But I couldn't do that unless I'd taken the detour. But the thing is, a lot of people in life do the detour and never have the calling to come back to where they should be. You know what I mean? They end up on a path, and before you know it, they're lost in a world of lack of self-worth and just don't know where they fit in this world. They get caught up in this vortex.
And a last question, because
time is moving on. We've not, mate. We could do 2 and 3.
I know we could do about 2. But listen, I'll have you back on, Ollie. But I've seen a great transition in yourself, and you've been inspirational for me, because you stick to something and you almost have an epiphany, and you go, right, boom, I'm going to stick to that. I'm going to add that to my bow, add that string to my bow. And you're constantly adding strings to your bow, and you're constantly inspiring. And what's next for Monsieur Ollerton, apart from the obvious with the team going back on SAS Australia? But what's next for you, mate?
We're building out. Breakpoint used to be a very sort of face-to-face thing. We're now building that out into a corporate development tool, which is a platform and app.
Nice.
I'm climbing Everest in April. With Nims, with your friend Nims.
Yeah.
So following your footsteps, mate. But I'm not going to go to K2, brother. You can keep that one.
Well, you know what? If I'm meant to look after my fellow man, I would say Everest. But give K2.
No, I was going until you told me the stories about it. So I'll leave that for you.
Listen, I'll let Nims tell you the stories for that as well. But so Everest is next on the horizon.
Yeah.
Why Everest?
I think for me, it's like I did Amadablam last year, climbed Amadablam. It was just, the mountain. Beauty of it, which I know 100% you can relate to. It's when you stand above the clouds and you can't hear the white noise, and you have that mountain view. everything is just such a powerful thing. And I think it's so good to adapt that sort of mentality and ethos when you come back down to ground, because it's so easy to get bogged down with the white noise of society and everyday life. Every now and then pop your head above the clouds.
Above the clouds, that's where it all started, right? Yeah. That's where you naturally belong. Everything below the clouds is all man-made. Yeah. It's all the structure, it's all the distraction. But when you have your head above those clouds, and I get it 100%, you connect with the planet, you connect with Mother Nature, you connect with yourself, and there's that beautiful synergy of this is what it's all about.
Yeah, 100%.
This is the connection that I seek. This is the connection that I crave, and this is who I truly am.
And going back to that point, and you'll again resonate with this, is the fact that I truly believe that, you know, we are people that, if you're going out there to inspire people and motivate people and everything else, we're still creating the story. We're not still banging on about a benchmark of the past that we achieved 20 years ago. You know what I mean? Yeah, okay, you did that 20 years ago, whatever it was. What are you doing today?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? What are you doing today? And that, for me, is like, you've got to create the story you'd love to be told. And it didn't end in the rearview mirror.
No. And it's a lifelong process. Keep creating that story. Keep writing those chapters.
Yeah.
And keep becoming a better version of who you are.
Beautiful.
Ollie, love you loads, mate.
Likewise, bro.
Can't wait to work with you again this year on SAS Australia. Thanks so much for joining me on Head Game. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss any of our incredible stories, and leave me a review wherever you're listening. I'd love to hear what you think. I'm Matt Middleton. Catch you again next time.